Alien princess saw a human janitor comfort her disabled brother. Her response shook the galaxy a human's touch in an alien world. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he pushed his maintenance cart down the gleaming corridors of Stellar Heights Academy. The prestigious institution rose like a crystalline mountain from the surface of Kepler 442b, its bioluminescent walls pulsing with soft blue light that mimicked the planet's twin suns. Every surface reflected the wealth and power of the families who sent their children here, the elite of the Galactic Commerce Union. The 42-year-old human had been working at the academy for 8 months, invisible to most who walked these halls. To the wealthy Vitharian families, the proud Zephyrian merchants and the noble Aquarian diplomats, he was just another maintenance worker. His dark hair showed streaks of premature gray from years of military service, and his weathered hands told stories of battles fought in distant star systems. Marcus preferred the evening shift when the corridors emptied of their usual bustle. No condescending glances from alien parents who viewed humans as a recently spacefaring species, barely worthy of menial labor. No whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when he entered a room. Just him, his work, and the peaceful hum of the Academy's advanced environmental systems. Tonight felt different, though. As Marcus rounded the corner toward the medical wing, a sound caught his attention. A soft, rhythmic whimpering that seemed to echo from classroom M7. The door stood partially open, casting a wedge of pale light across the polished floor. Marcus hesitated. His job was to clean and maintain, not investigate. But 15 years as a combat engineer in the Terran Defense Corps had trained him to recognize distress signals, regardless of their origin. The sound tugged at something deep within him, a protective instinct that military service had honed, but civilian life had never dulled. Peering through the gap, Marcus saw a small figure hunched in what appeared to be a medical chair. The child couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with the distinctive features of the Vitharian species. Pale silver skin that shimmered like moonlight, large violet eyes, and delicate bone structure that gave all Vitharians an almost ethereal appearance, but this child looked anything but ethereal. Her small body shook with silent sobs, and a viscous green substance covered her face and arms, some kind of medical treatment that had left angry red welts on her skin. The girl tried to wipe the substance away with her sleeve, but her movements were weak and uncoordinated. Each attempt only spread the irritating material further, causing fresh tears to stream down her face. Marcus made his decision. He knocked gently on the door frame and stepped inside, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice carrying the gentle tone he'd once used with scared civilians during peacekeeping missions. "Looks like you could use some help." The child's head snapped up, violet eyes wide with surprise and fear. Vitharian children were taught from birth to be wary of other species, especially humans who were considered unpredictable and emotionally volatile. "It's okay," Marcus assured her, pulling a clean cloth from his maintenance supplies and dampening it with purified water from his bottle. "I work here. My name's Marcus. What's yours?" The girl studied him for a long moment, her breathing gradually slowing. "Zara," she whispered, her voice musical despite her obvious distress. "Nice to meet you, Zara. Mind if I help clean that stuff off? It looks pretty uncomfortable." After another moment of hesitation, Zara nodded. Marcus knelt beside her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. With careful, practiced movements, he began gently cleaning the green residue from her face and arms. The substance had the consistency of medical gel, but it seemed to burn wherever it touched. "What is this stuff?" Marcus asked, noting how Zara's skin seemed to react badly to whatever treatment she'd received. "Neural catalyst," Zara replied, matter-of-factly. "It's supposed to help my brain work better, but it hurts so much. The doctors say Vitharian children don't feel pain the same way other species do, but they're wrong." Marcus felt a familiar anger rise in his chest, the same fury he'd experienced when seeing civilians mistreated during his military service. "Of course you feel pain. Any doctor worth their degree should know that." "You believe me?" Zara's eyes widened with hope, Kid, I've served alongside Vetharian soldiers. I've seen them cry when they're hurt, laugh when they're happy, and grieve when they lose friends. Anyone who says your species doesn't feel emotions the same way is either lying or ignorant. For the first time since Marcus had entered the room, Zara smiled. It was a small expression, but it transformed her entire face. The other workers here don't talk to me. They pretend I'm not there. Well, that's their loss, Marcus said, carefully cleaning around her eyes. You seem pretty interesting to me. How old are you? 7 solar cycles. I have Vetharian cognitive cascade syndrome. It makes my brain work differently, and the doctors are trying to fix it with treatments. Marcus had heard of the condition during his service, a rare neurological disorder that affected perhaps 1 in a million Vetharian children. The symptoms included difficulty with motor control, occasional seizures, and progressive cognitive decline. In humans, similar conditions were often manageable with proper care and therapy, but apparently Vetharian medicine took a more aggressive approach. How often do you have these treatments? Marcus asked, noting the precision with which he'd cleaned her face, muscle memory from battlefield medical training. 3 times a week, sometimes more if I have bad days. Marcus frowned. That seemed excessive for any medical treatment, especially for a child. And how do you feel afterward? Tired. Confused. Sometimes I can't remember things for days. Zara's voice grew smaller. Mother says it's necessary, but I hate it so much. Before Marcus could respond, the classroom door slid open with a soft hiss. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the corridor lighting, unmistakably Vetharian, but with a presence that commanded immediate attention. Lady Nexara Voss stepped into the room, and Marcus felt his breath catch. She was strikingly beautiful even by Vetharian standards, with silver skin that seemed to glow with inner light, and violet eyes that held depths of intelligence and barely contained power. Her elegant business attire spoke of wealth and authority, and Marcus recognized her immediately from news broadcasts. The youngest CEO in the history of Voss Interstellar Solutions, one of the most powerful corporations in this sector of the galaxy. Zara, the transport is waiting. Nexara's words died as she took in the scene, her daughter sitting calmly while a human maintenance worker knelt beside her, gently cleaning her face with obvious care and expertise. Mother, Zara exclaimed, her voice bright with excitement. This is Marcus. He helped clean the catalyst gel off my face. It was burning, but he made it stop hurting. Nexara's violet eyes moved from her daughter's clean, peaceful face to Marcus, who had slowly risen to his feet. For several seconds she said nothing, her expression unreadable. Marcus could practically feel her mind processing what she was witnessing. A human, a member of a species many aliens considered barely civilized, showing more genuine care for her daughter than most of the highly educated specialists she employed. I see, Nexara said finally, her voice carefully controlled. That was, considerate of you. Marcus inclined his head respectfully. Just doing what needed doing, ma'am. But Nexara wasn't done studying him. Her gaze lingered on his hands, steady and confident despite their obvious wear from manual labor. She noticed the way Zara had relaxed completely in his presence, something that never happened with doctors or staff members. Most telling of all was the complete absence of discomfort or disgust on his face when dealing with her daughter's condition. You're new to the academy, Nexara observed, though it wasn't really a question. 8 months, ma'am. Marcus Chen, Maintenance Division. And you have medical training? The question carried an undertone of suspicion. Some military field medicine. Nothing fancy, but enough to recognize when something's causing unnecessary pain. Nexara's eyes sharpened. You believe my daughter's treatment is causing unnecessary pain? Marcus hesitated. He was walking into dangerous territory, questioning the medical decisions of one of the most powerful beings in the star system. But Zara was looking up at him with trust in her violet eyes, and his conscience wouldn't let him stay silent. Believe pain is the body's way of saying something's wrong, and I've never seen a medical treatment that required a child to suffer like this. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Nixara was clearly debating something internally, her perfect features revealing nothing of her thoughts. "Come, Zara," she said finally, moving to guide her daughter's medical chair toward the door. "Dr. Corinth is waiting to review your progress." "Bye, Marcus," Zara called over her shoulder, her voice warm with genuine affection. "Thank you for helping." "Me. Any time, kiddo," Marcus replied, his heart clenching at the sight of the small girl being wheeled away to face more painful treatments. Just before exiting, Nixara paused and looked back. For a brief moment, her composed mask slipped, revealing something that looked almost like hope mixed with desperate uncertainty. "What is your full name?" she asked quietly. "Marcus David Chen, ma'am." She nodded once, filing the information away with the precision of someone accustomed to making important decisions based on limited data. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Chen." Then she was gone, leaving Marcus alone in the medical classroom, with more questions than answers. As he returned to his maintenance duties, he couldn't shake the image of Zara's trusting eyes, or the way Nixara had looked at him, as if he represented something she hadn't dared to hope for. 3 days later, Marcus was calibrating the atmospheric processors in the Academy's main atrium when his communication device chimed with an urgent message. The display showed a priority summons to Principal Thane's office. Immediately. Marcus had never been called to the principal's office in his 8 months at the Academy. Principal Thane was a distinguished Aquarian, with flowing blue tendrils instead of hair and eyes like liquid silver. He commanded respect throughout the Galactic Commerce Union's educational system. The walk to the administrative wing felt longer than usual, Marcus's mind racing through possible reasons for the summons. Had someone complained about his interaction with Zara? Was his employment about to be terminated for overstepping boundaries? Principal Thane's assistant, a nervous Zephyrian with translucent wings, gestured him through to the inner office without explanation. Inside, Marcus found not just the principal, but Lady Nixara Voss herself, seated elegantly in one of the visitor chairs. She had changed from her business attire into something more casual, yet no less expensive, a flowing garment that seemed to shift color with her movements. "Mr. Chen," Principal Thane said, his voice carrying its usual authority but also a note of deference when he glanced at Nixara. "Lady Voss has requested a private meeting with you. You may use my office." Before Marcus could respond, the principal had retreated, closing the door behind him and leaving them alone. "Ma'am?" Marcus remained standing, uncertain of protocol. "Please, sit," Nixara said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "I have a proposition for you." As Marcus settled into the chair, he noticed Nixara studying him with the same intensity she'd shown 3 nights ago. Today, however, her expression held none of the suspicion from their first meeting. "I've been researching you, Mr. Chen," she began, her melodic voice carefully neutral. "Former Terran Defense Corps combat engineer, 15 years of service, including 3 tours in the Outer Rim conflicts, decorations for valor, field medicine certifications, and commendations for protecting civilian populations during the Kepler uprising." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Ancient history, ma'am." "Is it? Because what I witnessed 3 nights ago suggested those instincts are very much alive." Nixara leaned forward slightly. "Zara hasn't stopped talking about you. She calls you the human who sees me as a person, not a problem." The words hit Marcus harder than he'd expected. She shouldn't have to be grateful for basic kindness. And yet, in her experience, basic kindness is rare. Nixara's voice carried a note of sadness that she quickly suppressed. "I want to offer you a position as Zara's personal care coordinator. The salary would be 10 times what you're currently earning, plus residence at my estate and full access to our medical facilities." Marcus blinked in surprise. "Ma'am, I appreciate the offer, but I'm a maintenance worker, not a medical professional. You're a combat veteran with field medical training who showed more insight into my daughter's condition in 5 minutes than her current medical team has shown in months." Nixara's violet eyes held his gaze. "More importantly, you're the first person to treat her as a child instead of a collection of symptoms. What does Zara think about this?" For the first time since he'd known her, Nexara smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her austere beauty into something breathtaking. She was quite insistent that I hire the human with kind hands immediately. I believe those were her exact words. Marcus couldn't help but smile at that. She's got strong opinions for a 7-year-old. Indeed so, Mr. Chen, do you accept? Marcus considered the offer. The money was substantial, enough to set him up for life. But more importantly, there was Zara, a sick child who needed someone to see her as more than just a medical case. His military training had taught him to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. This felt like a continuation of that mission. I accept, he said finally. On one condition. Nexara's eyebrows rose, clearly unaccustomed to having conditions placed on her offers. I want full transparency about Zara's condition and treatments. If I'm going to help her, I need to understand exactly what's happening. Something flickered across Nexara's face. Surprise, perhaps, or possibly relief. Agreed. Though I should warn you, Dr. Corinth may not appreciate your involvement. He's been treating Zara since she was diagnosed. I'm not looking to replace him, Marcus assured her, just to help however I can. Then we understand each other. Nexara rose gracefully, extending her hand in what Marcus recognized as a human gesture, another sign of her thorough research. Welcome to the Voss family, Mr. Chen. As Marcus shook her hand, feeling the cool, smooth texture of Vitharian skin, he had the distinct sense that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. The trust in Zara's violet eyes and the guarded hope in her mother's expression told him he was stepping into something far more complex than a simple caregiving position. But looking back on his military service, Marcus realized he'd always been drawn to the impossible missions, the ones where the odds were against success but the stakes were too important to ignore. Helping a sick alien child might not be the battle he'd expected to fight, but it felt like the one he'd been preparing for his entire life. When hearts speak the same language, the Voss estate sprawled across a crystalline plateau overlooking the Cerulean Valley, its architecture a seamless blend of Vitharian elegance and cutting-edge technology. As Marcus's transport descended toward the landing platform, he marveled at how the buildings seemed to grow from the landscape itself, their bioluminescent walls pulsing in harmony with the planet's natural rhythms. Impressive, Marcus murmured, his single duffel bag resting beside him. Everything he owned in the galaxy fit into one worn military-issue bag, a stark contrast to the opulence awaiting him. The transport settled with barely a whisper. As the door slid open, Marcus was greeted by a tall, imposing figure with the characteristic blue-tinted skin of the Aquarian species. The alien's liquid silver eyes regarded Marcus with undisguised suspicion. Mr. Chen, the Aquarian said, his voice carrying the musical quality of his species but lacking any warmth. I am Rendak, head of household staff. Follow me. No welcome, no pleasantries, just cold efficiency that reminded Marcus of his earliest days in military service. He shouldered his bag and followed Rendak through corridors that seemed to shift and flow like water, their walls displaying holographic art that moved and breathed with lifelike precision. Your quarters, Rendak announced, stopping before a door that materialized from what had appeared to be a solid wall. Lady Voss and young Miss Zara are in the medical wing. You will be summoned when your presence is required. The dismissive tone wasn't lost on Marcus. When might that be? When Lady Voss deems it appropriate. Rendak's silver eyes flashed with what might have been contempt. The household staff has been informed of your position. I trust you understand the delicate nature of this arrangement. Marcus stepped into his quarters, a spacious suite that would have housed an entire squad during his military days. I understand that a child needs care, and I'm here to provide it. Everything else is secondary. Something flickered across Rendak's aquatic features. Indeed. Dinner is served at precisely 19 hours. Do not be late. After Rendak departed, Marcus unpacked his few belongings and tried to process the magnitude of change in his circumstances. Less than a week ago, He'd been invisibly maintaining systems in an academy. Now he was living in one of the most luxurious estates in the star system, employed by one of its most powerful inhabitants. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The wall display activated, showing Zara's face bright with excitement. "Marcus, you came. Mother said you were going to live with us now. Is it true?" "It's true, kiddo. How are you feeling today?" Zara's expression dimmed slightly. "I had treatment this morning. Dr. Corinth says I need extra sessions because I've been having behavioral irregularities." Marcus frowned. "What kind of behavioral irregularities?" "I asked too many questions about why the treatments hurt so much, and I told him about you helping me feel better." Her violet eyes grew sad. "He said humans don't understand Vitharian physiology and that I shouldn't trust your judgment." Red flags began waving in Marcus's mind. Any competent doctor would welcome questions from a patient, especially a child trying to understand her condition. "What did your mother say about that?" "She told Dr. Corinth that you're part of my care team now and he needs to accept that." Zara brightened again. "She looked really angry when she said it. I've never seen her angry before." Before Marcus could respond, the communication link ended, leaving him with more questions than answers. He spent the next hour exploring his quarters and reviewing the medical files Nixara had provided. The more he read about Zara's condition and treatment history, the more concerned he became. Vitharian cognitive cascade syndrome was indeed rare and serious, but the treatment protocol seemed far more aggressive than anything Marcus had seen during his military service. The neural catalysts being used were experimental, with side effects, including severe pain, memory disruption, and potential organ damage. Most troubling were the frequency and intensity of the treatments. They seemed designed to suppress symptoms rather than address underlying causes. Another chime interrupted his review. This time, the wall display showed Nixara, her elegant features tight with stress. "Mr. Chen, please join us in the medical wing. Zara has requested your presence during her next treatment session." Marcus was already moving before she finished speaking. "On my way." The medical wing of the Voss estate rivaled any hospital facility Marcus had seen. Advanced diagnostic equipment lined the walls, and the air hummed with the energy of sophisticated life support systems. At the center of it all sat Zara in a specialized treatment chair, electrodes attached to her temples and an IV line running into her small arm. Dr. Corinth stood beside her, a tall Vitharian with the pale, almost translucent skin of the older generation. His violet eyes held the arrogance Marcus had come to associate with specialists who viewed patients as collections of symptoms rather than sentient beings. "Ah, the human arrives," Corinth said without looking up from his instruments. "I trust you understand this is a delicate procedure requiring absolute quiet." "Of course, Doctor," Marcus replied evenly, moving to Zara's side. "How are you feeling?" "Kiddo?" "Better now that you're here," Zara whispered, her small hand finding his. "It hurts less when I'm not scared." Corinth's head snapped up, his eyes flashing with irritation. "Fear is not a factor in Vitharian physiology. Young Miss Zara is simply experiencing normal treatment sensations." Marcus felt his jaw clench but kept his voice calm. "Normal sensations that cause a child to cry and shake? Doctor, I've treated combat wounds that caused less obvious distress. Your primitive military experience hardly qualifies you to judge advanced xenoneurology," Corinth replied coldly. "Perhaps you should observe in silence." "Perhaps," Nixara's voice cut through, the tension like a blade. "We should focus on my daughter's comfort rather than professional territorialism." She had entered without Marcus noticing, her presence immediately commanding attention. Today she wore a simple but elegant gown that seemed to shift colors with her movements, and her violet eyes held a dangerous intensity. "Of course, Lady Voss," Corinth said, his tone becoming obsequiously respectful. "I was merely explaining to the human the complexity of the procedures." "Mr. Chen has a name, Doctor. I suggest you use it." Nixara moved to stand beside Marcus, close enough that he could detect a faint, pleasant scent that reminded him of midnight blooming jasmine. and his observations regarding Zara's distress are valid. She has been notably calmer in his presence. Corinth's pale features darkened with anger, but he said nothing. Instead, he activated the neural catalyst delivery system, and immediately Zara's body went rigid with pain. Her small hand gripped Marcus's with surprising strength as tears streamed down her face. The pain response is within normal parameters, Corinth announced clinically. Treatment will continue for the prescribed duration. Marcus watched Zara suffer for another 30 seconds before his military instincts overrode diplomatic concerns. That's enough. She's reached her tolerance threshold. You have no authority here, human, Corinth snapped. This is not some battlefield medical tent. No, it's worse. In a battlefield tent, we actually try to minimize suffering. Marcus turned to Nexara. Look at her vitals. Her heart rate is over 180, her skin is cyanotic, and she's showing signs of neural shock. This isn't treatment, it's torture. Nexara's eyes darted between her daughter's obvious distress and the doctor's insistence that everything was normal. The conflict played across her features as she wrestled with trusting her instincts versus deferring to medical authority. Stop the treatment, she said finally, her voice cutting through Corinth's protests. Lady Voss, interrupting the cycle could cause permanent. I said stop it, now. Corinth's hands moved reluctantly to the controls, powering down the neural catalyst delivery system. Almost immediately, Zara's rigid posture relaxed and her breathing began to return to normal. Thank you, she whispered, still clinging to Marcus's hand. Always, kiddo. Marcus gently brushed tears from her cheeks, his touch careful and practiced. You did great. The following day settled into a routine that gradually revealed the complex dynamics of the Voss household. Marcus accompanied Zara to her treatments, advocating for modifications that reduced her pain without compromising therapeutic goals. He taught her human games and stories, marveling at her quick wit and resilient spirit despite her condition. Most of the household staff remained distant and occasionally hostile. Marcus would find his meals served last and sometimes lukewarm, his requests for supplies delayed or forgotten, and his presence acknowledged with barely concealed contempt. The message was clear. Humans might be tolerated, but they would never be accepted as equals. The exception was Kira, a young Zephyrian who worked in the kitchen. Her translucent wings would flutter nervously whenever she approached Marcus, but she always ensured his meals were properly prepared and would sometimes leave small tokens of friendship, a flower from the garden, a piece of fruit native to her homeworld, or a handwritten note in broken standard asking about Earth customs. They are not all unkind, she explained one evening when Marcus thanked her for another perfectly prepared meal. Some fear what they do not understand. Others resent what they see as human arrogance. But Kira sees how young Miss Zara smiles now. That is worth more than their approval. It was during these quiet evening conversations that Marcus began to understand the true complexity of his situation. The Galactic Commerce Union was built on species hierarchies that had evolved over centuries. Humans were the newcomers, barely, 200 years into interstellar travel, while species like the Vitharians had been exploring space for millennia. Lady Voss breaks many rules by trusting you, Kira observed, her large eyes reflecting concern. Important people watch this house. They ask questions about the human who influences medical decisions. What kind of questions? Questions about your background, your motivations, your relationship with the family. Kira's wings folded tightly against her back, a sign of nervousness in her species. Some suggest you use young Miss Zara's condition to gain access to Lady Voss's wealth and influence. The accusation stung because Marcus could see how it might appear from the outside. A maintenance worker suddenly elevated to a position of trust and influence in one of the most powerful households in the sector. To cynical observers, it would look like opportunistic manipulation. What do you think? Marcus asked quietly. Kira's expression grew thoughtful. Kira thinks you love that child like she was your own. And that scares people more than if you were simply greedy. That evening, Marcus was reviewing Zara's latest medical reports when a soft knock interrupted his concentration. The door opened to reveal Nexara, looking less composed than usual. She had changed from her business attire into a flowing robe that seemed to capture and reflect the room's ambient light. "May I come in? I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Of course, just reviewing Zara's test results. Please, sit." Marcus gestured to the comfortable seating area his quarters provided. Nexara settled gracefully into a chair, but her usual poise seemed strained. "I wanted to thank you for what you did today. Zara's pain levels have decreased significantly since you began advocating for treatment modifications. She's a remarkable kid. She deserves to be comfortable during her treatments. Dr. Corinth disagrees. He believes pain is necessary for the therapy to be effective." Marcus set aside his datapad and looked directly at her. "With respect, Dr. Corinth is wrong. Pain doesn't enhance healing. It impedes it. The body's stress response can actually interfere with the very neural pathways he's trying to stimulate." Nexara leaned forward, her violet eyes intense with interest. "You sound very certain about that." "I've seen it countless times. Wounded soldiers who received proper pain management healed faster and more completely than those who didn't. The principle doesn't change just because the patient is a different species. Yet Dr. Corinth has decades of experience treating Vitharian conditions." Marcus chose his words carefully. "Experience can be valuable, but it can also create blind spots. Sometimes an outside perspective sees things that familiarity misses." They sat in comfortable silence for several moments, the only sound the subtle hum of the estate's environmental systems. Finally, Nexara spoke again. "Zara asked me today if you could be her real father." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that families come in many forms and that love isn't determined by biology." Nexara's voice grew softer. "She said she knows you love her because you listen when she talks and believe her when she says she's in pain. She's easy to love. She's brave and smart and sees the best in people despite everything she's been through." "Like her mother?" The question came out more vulnerable than Nexara had probably intended. Marcus looked at her. Really looked. Behind the composed CEO facade, he saw a woman carrying enormous responsibility, making decisions that affected thousands of lives while wrestling with her own fears about her daughter's future. She was brilliant and powerful, but also desperately alone in the weight of her choices. "Like her mother," he agreed quietly. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Then Nexara rose, her professional mask sliding back into place. "I should let you rest. Tomorrow will be another long day of treatments." As she reached the door, Marcus called her name. She paused, looking back. "For what it's worth, I think you're an incredible mother. Zara is lucky to have someone who fights so hard for her." Something vulnerable and genuine flashed across Nexara's features before her composed mask returned. "Thank you, Marcus. That means more than you know." After she left, Marcus sat in his quarters, staring out at the alien landscape beyond his windows. The twin moons of Kepler 442b cast everything in ethereal silver light, making the world look like something from a dream. He was falling in love with them, both of them. The realization should have terrified him, but instead it felt like coming home after a long deployment. For the first time since leaving military service, he felt like he was where he belonged, doing work that mattered. But Kira's warning echoed in his mind. Important people were watching. Questions were being asked. And somewhere in the shadows of galactic politics and corporate intrigue, forces were gathering that would test everything he'd come to care about. Marcus had faced enemy fire, survived ship-to-ship combat, and led rescue missions into hostile territory. But protecting a sick alien child and her mother from the machinations of their own society might prove to be the most dangerous mission of his life. As he prepared for bed, Marcus made a silent promise to the sleeping child one floor below and the woman who trusted him with her most precious treasure. Whatever came next, whatever forces aligned against them, he would stand between them and harm. It's what soldiers did. It's what fathers did. And regardless of biology or species, that's exactly what he intended to be. When courage faces corruption. The crisis came without warning on a Tuesday morning that had started like any other. Marcus was in the estate's physical therapy room with Zara, helping her practice the motor coordination exercises that had become part of their daily routine. Over the past 3 weeks, her improvement had been remarkable. Her movements were more controlled, her speech clearer, and most importantly, she was experiencing significantly less pain. "Look, Marcus," Zara exclaimed, successfully manipulating a complex puzzle designed to test fine motor skills. "Dr. Corinth said I'd never be able to do things like this, but I can." "You've been working hard," Marcus replied, pride evident in his voice. "Your dedication is paying off." What he didn't mention was his growing suspicion that Zara's improvements had less to do with the treatments and more to do with their reduction in frequency and intensity. Since he'd begun advocating for modified protocols, Zara had received the neural catalyst therapy only twice per week instead of daily, and at lower concentrations than Dr. Corinth had originally prescribed. The door slid open, admitting Nexara with a smile that had become increasingly common over the past weeks. The transformation in their relationship had been gradual but undeniable. Professional courtesy had evolved into genuine friendship, which had begun to carry undertones of something deeper that neither had yet acknowledged directly. "How is our star patient today?" Nexara asked, moving to kiss the top of Zara's head. "I finished the level 7 puzzle. Marcus says I'm ready for level 8 tomorrow." "Incredible." Nexara's violet eyes found Marcus over her daughter's head, conveying gratitude that went far beyond words. "Dr. Corinth would like to see you both in his office when you have a moment. He has some new test results to discuss." Something in her tone made Marcus's instincts sharpen. Did he say what kind of results? Cognitive function assessments and neural pathway scans from last week. Nexara's expression was carefully neutral, but Marcus caught the tension around her eyes. They made their way to Dr. Corinth's medical office, a sterile space filled with advanced diagnostic equipment and holographic displays showing various biological systems. The doctor stood with his back to them, studying a complex neural map projected in 3 dimensions above his desk. "Ah, you're here," Corinth said without turning around. "I have some rather disturbing results to share." Marcus felt Zara's small hand slip into his, a gesture that had become natural between them. "What kind of disturbing results, Doctor?" Corinth finally turned, his pale Vitharian features arranged in an expression of professional concern that didn't quite reach his violet eyes. "Young Miss Zara's neural pathways are showing signs of deterioration that I haven't seen before. The cascade syndrome is progressing much faster than my models predicted." "That's impossible," Marcus said immediately. "Her cognitive function has improved dramatically over the past 3 weeks. Her motor control is better, her memory is clearer, and her pain levels are minimal. Surface improvements can be misleading," Corinth replied dismissively. "The brain, scans don't lie. She needs immediate intensive treatment. Daily neural catalyst therapy at maximum therapeutic doses. We may already be too late to prevent permanent damage." Nexara stepped forward, her CEO persona fully engaged. "Show me the scans." Corinth activated the holographic display, revealing a complex 3-dimensional map of Zara's brain. To Marcus's eyes, it looked remarkably healthy. Neural pathways were well-defined. Activity levels appeared normal, and there were no obvious signs of the degradation Corinth claimed to see. "Here," Corinth pointed to a section of the temporal lobe. "These areas show decreased electrical activity compared to baseline measurements from 3 months ago." Marcus studied the display with the analytical skills his military training had developed. Something felt wrong about what he was seeing, but he couldn't immediately identify the problem. "Doctor," he said carefully, "could you show us the original baseline scans for comparison?" "That's not necessary. The deterioration is quite obvious to a trained eye." "Humor me." Corinth's jaw tightened, but he activated another display showing supposedly earlier brain scans. Marcus studied both sets of images, his suspicion growing. The differences were subtle, but something about the timestamps and data markers didn't add up. When exactly were these baseline scans taken? Marcus asked. 3 months ago, as I stated. Before or after we reduced the treatment frequency? I hardly see how that's relevant. It's extremely relevant. If the baseline scans were taken when Zara was receiving maximum doses of neural catalyst, and the current scans show her brain 3 weeks after we reduced those doses, then what we're seeing isn't deterioration, it's recovery. The room fell silent except for the hum of medical equipment. Corinth's pale features had grown even more colorless and his hands were trembling slightly. That's preposterous, he said, but his voice lacked its usual authority. The neural catalyst therapy is designed to stimulate pathway development, not damage it. Marcus felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Unless the dosage is too high. Unless you're not treating her condition, you're causing it. How dare you accuse me of medical malpractice? Corinth's voice rose, but Marcus could hear the fear underneath the anger. I'm not accusing you of malpractice, Wamway, Marcus replied quietly. I'm accusing you of deliberate harm. Before Corinth could respond, Marcus stepped to the holographic display and began manipulating the controls. His years of working with complex systems paid off as he navigated the medical software with surprising skill. What are you doing? Nexara demanded, looking for the truth. Marcus accessed the file history and metadata for the brain scans. These timestamps have been altered. The baseline scans Corinth showed us were actually taken yesterday, not 3 months ago. The revelation hit the room like a physical blow. Nexara's violet eyes blazed with fury as she turned to face the doctor. Explain. Now. Corinth's composure cracked completely. You don't understand the pressures I'm under. The pharmaceutical consortium that funds my research demanded results. They needed proof that the neural catalyst therapy was effective long-term. So, you falsified medical data? Nexara's voice was deadly calm. I enhanced the contrast to make the improvements more obvious, Corinth said desperately. The treatment is working, but the investors wanted more dramatic proof. Marcus felt sick as the full scope of the deception became clear. How long? How long has Zara been receiving unnecessary treatments? Corinth's shoulders slumped in defeat. Since her father died. Talon had developed a much gentler protocol that was showing promise, but it would have taken years to demonstrate significant improvement. The consortium wanted faster results. You've been torturing a child for 3 years to satisfy investors? Marcus's voice was barely controlled rage. It wasn't supposed to cause permanent damage. The neural catalyst is effective in small doses, but the consortium kept demanding we increase the concentration to speed up results. Nexara had gone very still, a dangerous sign that Marcus was beginning to recognize. When she spoke, her voice could have frozen the room's atmosphere. Dr. Corinth, you are terminated. Security will escort you from the premises immediately. You will surrender all medical records, research data, and pharmaceutical samples in your possession. Lady Voss, please, I can explain. The only explanation I want is why I shouldn't have you arrested for child abuse. Nexara activated her communication device. Security to Medical Wing 1. Escort Dr. Corinth from the premises. As security personnel arrived to remove the disgraced doctor, Marcus knelt beside Zara, who had been listening to the exchange with wide, frightened eyes. Am I going to be okay? She whispered. You're going to be more than okay, kiddo. You're going to be amazing. Marcus pulled her into a gentle hug. No more painful treatments. No more lies about your condition. Just recovery and healing. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of revelation and reform. Marcus worked with Nexara to find new medical specialists, doctors who prioritized patient welfare over research profits. They discovered that Zara's condition, while real, was far less severe than Corinth had claimed. With proper treatment, focused on physical therapy, cognitive support, and pain management rather than aggressive chemical intervention, her improvement accelerated dramatically, but the consequences of exposing Corinth's deception extended far beyond the Voss estate. The pharmaceutical consortium he'd been working with had connections throughout the Galactic Commerce Union, and they were not pleased that their profitable research program had been exposed as fraudulent. The first sign of retaliation came in the form of a formal complaint filed with the Galactic Medical Ethics Board. Marcus found himself accused of practicing medicine without proper credentials, interfering with legitimate treatment protocols, and using his position to manipulate a vulnerable family for personal gain. "They're trying to discredit me," Marcus explained to Nexara as they reviewed the charges. "If they can prove I'm unqualified or untrustworthy, it undermines everything we've discovered about Zara's treatment." Nexara paced the length of her study, her elegant form tense with barely contained fury. "They underestimate what they're facing. I have resources they can't imagine." "This isn't about resources," Marcus replied quietly. "It's about credibility. I'm a human with military medical training questioning centuries of Vitharian medical tradition. In the eyes of the Medical Ethics Board, I'm exactly what they're painting me as, an unqualified outsider interfering in matters beyond my understanding. Then we'll prove them wrong." The hearing was scheduled for the following week to be held at the Galactic Commerce Union headquarters on the neutral world of Haven Prime. Marcus would face a panel of medical experts from across the galaxy, defending not just his actions but his very right to have opinions about alien medical practices. 3 days before the hearing, Marcus was in the garden with Zara when she made an observation that crystallized everything he'd been feeling. "You're scared," she said matter-of-factly, looking up from the earth flower seeds Marcus had been teaching her to plant. "Not about the hearing, but about leaving us." Marcus paused in his work, struck by her perceptiveness. "What makes you say that?" "You get very quiet when you think about things ending, like when you told me stories about your friends from the war who didn't come home." Zara's violet eyes held wisdom far beyond her 7 years. "You're afraid that if you lose the hearing, you'll have to go away and we'll forget about you." "I could never forget about you, kiddo. You're the most important person in my life." "What about Mother?" The directness of the question caught Marcus off guard. "Your mother is? She's incredible, strong and brilliant and beautiful. But she's also way out of my league." Zara giggled, a sound that never failed to make Marcus smile. "That's silly. Mother told Kira that you're the first person in years who sees her as more than just a CEO or a powerful Vitharian. She said you see her as just Nexara." Before Marcus could respond, the subject of their conversation appeared at the garden entrance. Nexara had exchanged her usual business attire for simple work clothes, and her silver hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked younger and more relaxed than Marcus had ever seen her. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. "I thought I might learn something about Earth agriculture." They spent the afternoon working together in the soil, Nexara proving surprisingly adept at gardening despite her privileged background. As the twin suns began to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, they sat on a bench overlooking the valley below. "Whatever happens at the hearing," Nexara said quietly, "I want you to know that you've changed our lives in ways I never thought possible. Zara is healthier and happier than she's been in years, and I've remembered what it feels like to trust someone completely." Marcus turned to look at her, seeing vulnerability in her expression that few beings in the galaxy were privileged to witness. "Nexara, I know," she interrupted gently. "I feel the same way. But right now, you need to focus on the hearing. We can discuss the future afterward." The night before his departure for Haven Prime, Marcus found himself unable to sleep. He stood at the window of his quarters, looking out at the alien landscape that had somehow become home. A soft knock interrupted his solitude. Zara stood in the doorway in her sleep clothes, clutching a stuffed animal that looked like a cross between an Earth teddy bear and a Vitharian night glider. "I can't sleep either," she said simply. "I keep thinking about what happens if they say you can't be my friend anymore." Marcus knelt down to her level, taking her small hands in his larger ones. "Listen to me very carefully, kiddo. No matter what any board or committee or authority says, I will always be your friend. They can take away my job. They can ban me from practicing medicine. They can even make me leave this planet. But they cannot take away the fact that I love you and will always be proud to know you. Tears gathered in Zara's violet eyes. But what if they're right? What if you don't really know enough about Vetharian medicine to help me? Then we'll find doctors who do know enough and who also care about you as a person, not just as a case study. The important thing isn't whether I have all the answers. It's that we ask the right questions and never stop fighting for what's best for you. Zara nodded solemnly, then threw her arms around his neck in a fierce hug. I love you too, Marcus, and when I grow up I want to be a doctor who helps people the way you help people. The hearing on Haven Prime was everything Marcus had expected and feared. The medical ethics panel consisted of representatives from 7 different species, each bringing their own cultural biases and professional prejudices to the evaluation of his conduct. The prosecution, led by a distinguished Aquarian medical ethicist, painted Marcus as a dangerous amateur whose interference had jeopardized the life of an innocent child. They questioned his credentials, his motivations, and his fundamental understanding of non-human physiology. The defendant, the prosecutor declared, represents the worst aspects of human arrogance, the belief that their limited experience qualifies them to override centuries of established medical practice. Marcus's defense was simple. He presented the evidence. Brain scans showing Zara's improvement once the harsh treatment stopped, video testimonials from the child herself, articulating her reduced pain and increased cognitive function, expert analysis of Dr. Corinth's falsified data and the pharmaceutical consortium's financial incentives. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. Zara had traveled to Haven Prime not as a witness, but as a petitioner. Using her influence and resources, she had conducted her own investigation into the Neural Catalyst research program. What she revealed shocked even Marcus. Honorable panel members, Zara began, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to boardrooms and power structures. The charges against Mr. Chen are not isolated accusations. They are part of a coordinated effort to silence someone who exposed systematic abuse of Vetharian children across multiple medical facilities. She activated a holographic display showing financial records, communication logs, and medical data from dozens of facilities across the sector. The pharmaceutical consortium that funded Dr. Corinth's research has been conducting similar programs on over 300 children, all using experimental protocols that prioritize investor returns over patient welfare. The revelations caused chaos in the hearing room. Panel members who had been prepared to condemn Marcus for his presumption now found themselves confronting evidence of a conspiracy that extended far beyond one family's medical decisions. Mr. Chen didn't overstep his authority. Zara continued, her violet eyes blazing with righteous anger. He used his training and compassion to recognize what trained specialists either missed or chose to ignore. He saved my daughter from years of unnecessary suffering, and in doing so, exposed a system that has been harming children for profit. The panel deliberated for 3 days. When they reconvened, the lead adjudicator, an elderly Vetharian with the bearing of someone who had dedicated her life to medical ethics, delivered a verdict that would reshape interspecies medical cooperation for generations. The panel deliberated for 3 days. When they reconvened, the lead adjudicator, an elderly Vetharian with the bearing of someone who had dedicated her life to medical ethics, delivered a verdict that would reshape interspecies medical cooperation for generations. We find that Mr. Marcus Chen's actions, while technically outside his formal credentials, were not only justified, but exemplary. His willingness to prioritize patient welfare over professional hierarchy represents the best traditions of medical practice, regardless of species. She paused, her ancient eyes surveying the packed hearing room. Furthermore, this panel recommends the immediate establishment of interspecies medical oversight committees, with representatives from all member species of the Galactic Commerce Union. The era of species-specific medical isolation must end if we are to prevent future tragedies. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face as the implications sank in. Not only had he been vindicated, but the panel was recommending systematic changes that would protect countless other children across the galaxy. The aftermath of the hearing brought changes Marcus could never have anticipated. He was offered positions at prestigious medical facilities across the sector, opportunities to help establish the new interspecies oversight committees, and invitations to speak at conferences about the importance of patient advocacy. But there was only one offer that truly mattered to him. "Stay with us," Nexara said simply as they stood together in the estate's garden, watching Zara play with the human flowers that had finally begun to bloom. Not as an employee, but as family. Marcus turned to look at her, seeing in her violet eyes the same love and hope he felt in his own heart. "Are you sure? A human and a Vetharian, and there will be challenges. The best things in life usually involve challenges," Nexara replied, stepping closer. "Besides, our daughter needs a father who understands that strength isn't about overwhelming force. It's about knowing when to be gentle." As if summoned by their conversation, Zara ran toward them, her movements fluid and coordinated in ways that would have been impossible months ago. She launched herself into Marcus's arms with complete confidence that he would catch her. "Did you tell him yet?" she asked her mother conspiratorially. "Tell me what?" Marcus asked, settling Zara on his hip in a gesture that had become second nature. "That we want you to be our family forever," Zara announced with the straightforward honesty of childhood. "Not just because I'm sick, but because you make us both happy." Looking at the two most important beings in his galaxy, Marcus realized that his greatest mission hadn't been fought on distant battlefields or in sterile hearing rooms. It had been fought in quiet moments of compassion, in the willingness to see beyond species barriers to the fundamental truth that connected all sentient life. Love, protection, the fierce determination to stand between those you care about and anything that would harm them. "Forever sounds perfect to me," he said, pulling both of them close as the alien sun set over their shared home. In the years that followed, Marcus would help establish medical protocols that saved thousands of lives across the galaxy. He would train doctors in the art of interspecies compassion and advocate for patients who had no voice of their own. He would become a symbol of humanity's greatest strength, not its technology or its weapons, but its capacity for boundless empathy. But his greatest achievement would always be the family he'd helped to heal and the love he'd found in the most unlikely of places. Because sometimes, the most important battles aren't won with force or strategy. They're won with kindness, persistence, and the simple human truth that every being deserves to be seen, valued, and protected. That was the message that would echo across the galaxy, carried by the story of a human janitor who dared to comfort a sick alien child and change the course of interspecies relations forever. In the end, it wasn't humanity's technology or military might that earned them respect among the stars. It was their unshakable belief that compassion knows no boundaries. And in a universe often defined by difference and division, that belief would prove to be the most powerful force of all.